Hey everybody, welcome back to When Harry Met Board Games. I'm Harry and I continue to go through my top 50 games of all time. Today, I'll be covering my numbers 16 through 11. So we're getting to the heart of the list, the part of the list where I really am in love with my games. These are the games that I could play dozens upon dozens of time in a year and not even come close to getting burned out on them. I love these games. I enjoy these games. I have tons of people who I game with who enjoy these games with me. So without further ado, we move on to my number 15 game of all time, Pandemic, designed by Matt Leacock and published by Z-Man Games. This is a cooperative game where all players are on the same team with the same goal and the same objective in mind, which is to stop the spread of these four deadly epidemic viruses that are spreading throughout the entire globe. The board is a map of the entire world. You and your team are a group of specialists who work for the CDC, the Center of Disease Control, and you all have different unique abilities that help benefit you, help you break or tweak some of the rules in the game to your advantage. There's a lot of brainstorming going on in this game. There's a lot of group thinking going on in this game, a lot of discussion. What I appreciate about this game is how all the decisions, or at least most of the decisions as the game goes forward, are very tense and tight and challenging. They're very thought-provoking decisions. What can I do? Because there's so many ways, so many different ways of skinning the cat, so many different ways of trying to approach this game. This game is vicious. As you increase the difficulty levels, as you get more experience, you can increase the difficulty levels, and these difficulty levels are really challenging. I like this game. I feel like it's easily taught to other people. It's a great gateway or introductory game for new gamers or for people who don't play too many games. There are a lot of people that I game with that are not too fond of this game because they don't appreciate the cooperative experience. They want to have a human competitor who they can lord it over after they finish defeating them and crushing them, right? But if you can appreciate teamwork, if you can appreciate team building exercise, this is a great game for that. Again, elegant, streamlined mechanisms, but at the same time, just fun play, immersive play. You add some expansions and forget about it. The replayability in this game is infinite. That is my number 15 game of all time, Pandemic. Now we move on to my number 14 game of all time, Memoir 44, designed by Richard Borg and published by Days of Wonder. This game is a war-themed game. In particular, it is a World War II themed game where two players will combat each other, one player taking the side of the Allies, whether it be the American forces, the French forces, the British forces, and the other opponent taking the side of the Axis, in particular the German forces. In the base game with expansions, you can participate and control Japanese forces as well. There's also expansions that add Russian armies and so on and so forth. This game has a ton of content out there. It is a streamlined, simple war game. You're using hand management, different cards that allow you to give orders to troops on different sides of the board. The board is divided into three sides: the left flank, the right flank, and the center. And based on your hand of cards, you can determine how many units and where can you order those units. Also, you've got a simple combat resolution, which is the dice. They show the symbols of the units that they're trying to kill. So in order to kill a particular unit, whether you're trying to kill an infantry unit or an armor unit or an artillery unit, you need to roll the side of the die that represents that particular unit. You also have a wild, which is a symbol of a grenade. It combines some luck with the dice rolling, but some very strategic gameplay with those cards that you have, because you only have a certain amount of cards in your hand and you're playing a card, and you're perhaps hoping that in the future you'll draw specific cards that give you access to different parts of the board, but you may or may not draw them. So can you use the ones that you do have as efficiently as possible to accomplish your goals? This game comes with a rule book that has a bunch of different scenarios based off real historical battles. It has a little introductory information, some historical tidbits, and um, trivia, and then also each different scenario is, if there's an attempt to be authentic and true to the original combat, and at the same time respectful of the content matter. This game also, with each different scenario, has a different winning condition and a different setup, right? You have a different setup for the units, where they are. Different terrains are represented by these tiles that you place on the board, representing forests and mountains and rivers and all kinds of other different types of terrains. This game is a neat game, fun, quick. The game probably takes 45 minutes tops. And again, it's just a back and forth game. Sometimes the outcomes can be pretty lopsided. Sometimes you can rewrite history through the play of this game and have an outcome totally different than what originally happened. If you like history, if you like to learn, but at the same time, you also like to have some fun with it, this is a great game for you. My number 14 game of all time, Memoir 44. And now we move on to my number 13 game of all time, and it's this big box. It actually says it on the box. El Grande, the big box. So this is designed by Wolfgang Kramer and Richard Ulrich, and it is published, at least this edition is, by Z-Man Games. This is the big box edition. It includes 5 expansions, I believe it is, maybe 5 or 6 expansions are included in this box, along with the base game. El Grande is a classic, designed in 1995. It was a Spiel des Jahres winner, which is the most prestigious award that any game can aspire to within the board gaming industry. This game is a classic. It introduced, or at least, kind of made popular this particular mechanism known as area control or area majority, where you're not just trying to take over a plot or a piece of the board, you're actually trying to have the most representation on that part of the board. And you score a certain amount of points or benefit in a certain way by having the majority on that part of the board. And the board is divided into different parts. So in this particular game, we have a map of Spain, and it's divided amongst many different regions or provinces in Spain, and you're trying to get the majority or secondary or even tertiary, depending on how many players are playing. This game accommodates up to 5 players. You're trying to get the majority, secondary, tertiary in these different regions, and you score accordingly. Obviously, if you're first, you score a certain amount of points, and so on and so forth. Now, some of the regions are more valuable than others, therefore, there are going to be more people vying for control in these regions, while some are less coveted, which might make it easy for you to sneak a win in those regions and get a few more points added to your total. This game has a interesting turn order resolution from round to round, where you are participating in an auction. You're bidding certain what they call power cards with a number on them, and you bid them one at a time, and you cannot bid the same number that an opponent bid, and each card that you bid, they range from 1 to 13, can only be used once during the auction. It's a very unique and clever way. It adds a game within the game, because even just trying to figure out turn order from round to round becomes a game in and of itself. You have different action cards that are all lined up before the round. You know which action cards are available for that round, and they allow you to manipulate the board in different ways and to place more workers or less workers depending on the action card. Now, what's interesting is that when you're making this auction and for the turn order, you have all those cards in display. You have all those cards available to you. That knowledge is known to you. So based on what you can do on that given turn, you will determine, or at least make your peace with where you end up in the turn order. Maybe you really want to go first because you see an action that truly can benefit you, or you're definitely afraid that one of your opponents goes before you and triggers that action that will let them run away with the lead. Also, this game is divided. It's either, there's a short version, there's the 6-round version, which is the shorter version, and there's the longer 9-round version. And you only score 3 times in the game. So you have certain rounds that are scoring rounds. Other rounds are just like setup. They're just a means to an end, but you don't score on those rounds. So even knowing whether or not it's a scoring round as opposed to a non-scoring round also plays a factor in, where do I want to end up in the turn order? Am I okay being first? Am I all right being last? Do I want to be somewhere in the middle? Is it worth bidding this high? A lot of tight, again, tense decisions that have become available to you in this game. I appreciate it. The art, it's a little antiquated. It's a little old school. People might not like the graphic design. This is an old game. It hasn't really truly been modified across the years. The only difference that I could see from some older versions is I believe older versions used cubes, while El Grande has gotten with the times, and now they use meeples, little people, wooden pieces shaped like people instead of squared cubes. But other than that, the graphic design and the artwork still looks pretty outdated. But the game mechanisms are clean. They're elegant. They are easy to teach, very streamlined, and at the same time, again, just with all those different action cards available, and then in the turn order, determined by auction and bidding, all these cute, cool little things, combined together. It's something I always appreciate in a game, that ability to take a few things, not too many things, but also not too few things, right? There's some complexity there, and mesh them together, in such a neat way. It's not messy, it's not convoluted, it's not sloppy. It just seems to work. It seems just right. Like, how can you marry all these mechanisms together in a way that makes you feel that they belong together, that they never were meant to be apart? That's kind of like what Wolfgang Kramer accomplishes, as far as I'm concerned, in this game, El Grande. Again, it's a Spanish board, a board of Spain. My wife spent 5 years living in Spain, so it does have that sentimental value in our household as well. And that is my number 13 game of all time, El Grande. Now we move on to my number 12 game of all time, and that is Carcassonne. Just base Carcassonne. I do own some spin-offs, have played some of these spin-offs, but Carcassonne is where it's at. I do enjoy the base game. However, I play for the most part, I play with the first two expansions, which are the Inns and Cathedrals and the Traders and Builders expansions. More importantly, I always make sure to throw in the meeples from these expansions. The tiles I can do with or without. It's fun. They do add some interesting decisions. Some of these tiles, double and triple your score, or triple the amount of points. Some of these tiles, allow you to do a little bit of resource set collection on the side, on top of it all. But it's really the different meeples that give you more opportunities to place things down as the game goes by. This is a tile placement game, so you're drawing a tile from a bag and you're placing it on the board, and you're creating the board as the game goes on. And whenever you place a tile, it has to match the landscape, right? You cannot discontinue the landscape that's already on the board. And when you place the tile down, you have the option of placing down one of your meeples, one of your mini peoples, these small little wooden pieces that are shaped like human beings. You have the chance to place them, and depending on the type of tile you place down, that determines what type of worker your meeple is, and it also determines how many points that meeple will score for you when you finish or complete that feature that you placed it on. With the expansions, you have additional meeples. So it gives you, first of all, more turns in which you can place things down, because some of these meeples, you're not going to get them back. They're going to stay stranded on the board for a while, if not indefinitely. And it gives you meeples that do different things. I like playing this with the expansions, but again, it's a fun with the base game. It's a gateway game for sure. It's an introductory game. It's the type of game that you could teach to almost anybody. Will they like it? That's up to them. But me, my family, we love it. I always say it. In our household, we are definitely a Carcassonne family. I own all the expansions, enjoy most of them. I own a bunch of spin-offs. My wife and I, we enjoy this game. My cousin Rodney likes this game. My niece and nephews appreciate this game. And most people that I've introduced to this game have some sort of appreciation for it. And that is my number 12 game of all time, Carcassonne. And now for the last one on today's list, my number 11 game of all time. And this is not so much a big box, but it is a heavy one, and that is Dominion, my number 11 game of all time. If I would have done this list 6 months ago, this game probably would have been in my top 5, but it has dropped down to my number 11. This is not the only box of Dominion I own, and this is such a heavy box. It's filled with hundreds upon hundreds of cards. Dominion is designed by Donald X. Vaccarino, who designed another game on my list, Kingdom Builder. Donald X. Vaccarino is the designer of this game, and the publisher is Grande Games. This game introduced a new genre into the gaming world, and that is the deck building genre. I absolutely love deck builders. While there's only a few deck builders in my top 50 games of all time, if I would have done my top 100, it would have added a whole bunch more of deck builders. I enjoy the mechanism. It makes me take themes and even aspects of gameplay that I don't even enjoy too much sometimes in other games, and makes me turn a blind eye and forgive them because of how much I love the core mechanism of deck building. This game was the first ever pure deck builder, and that's what it is, just a pure deck builder. You start off with a small deck of cards, a weak deck of cards, and you use those weak cards to acquire or to purchase better cards. And as the game goes on, your deck is getting stronger and stronger because you're adding powerful cards to it, and you're using those powerful cards to try to get cards that represent victory points for you. And whoever gets the most victory points at the end of the game wins. It's a quick game. First of all, the board remains static because there is no tactical, adapting on the fly kind of scenario, because all the cards are available to you pretty much until the stack of each of these cards run out. There's 10 different cards that you can purchase, plus the different coin cards and the different victory point cards. And pretty much the board does not change. So you can start mapping out your turn as the other players take their turn. And 99.999% of the time, when the game comes back to you, nothing will have changed, and you will be able to make your decision just the way you planned it. It makes for quick turns, quick gameplay, and at the same time, it still allows a certain meaningfulness to the decisions you're making. Again, it's one of those games similar to Race for the Galaxy, which I mentioned in a previous list, which has a meaty, substantial, crunchy feeling to it, but at the same time does not take up too much of your precious time, right? Because some of these meatier, crunchier experiences also tend to come with longer time investments. This game has tons of expansions. Even if you just buy the base game, you have so much replayability. You buy an expansion or two, you might never ever cover all the possibilities. I own tons of expansions. I'm up for the challenge. I play this. This is definitely top 3 most played games of all time for me. I play this game a lot, in particular with my nephews and my niece, who love and adore this game. My number 11 game of all time, Dominion. Whew. Well, that was my number 15 through 11. I only have 10 more games to go, 2 more videos to go. Those are going to be the absolute greatest games of all time, in my opinion. But these games, they were pretty good too. You should check them out. Thank you so much for giving me your time, for spending some time just watching my channel, watching this top 50 games of all time. Please comment down below on what are your favorite games of all time. What are your favorite 15 through 11? Like this video and subscribe to our channel if you like this content. And I'll catch you next time with my top 10 games of all time. This is Harry from When Harry Met Board Games. You take care. Bye-bye.